Gordie, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm just fine. And yourself?
Not too bad. Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
No problem. That's good. You get my note yesterday? I've got to get out of here about 6:45.
Yep, I got that, and I will be brief, but still get quite a bit out of you at the same time.
Sure.
So
Yeah, you can throw me out anytime you like. I don't mind, but got
yeah,
to be
no,
gone. Yeah.
no worries. But thanks for joining me because it's kind of fun to get another I'll call vintage goalie. Somebody who grew up in the two-piece chest pad era. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. If that's what you called it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever it was, it was. But yeah, it was a long time ago, but lots of fun.
I think back to that first chest protector I had from the association. It was two-piece, and it was like I think it was just there so that mentally we felt like we had something on to protect us, but it didn't do anything. It just made it
No,
harder to get our jersey on.
there you go. It wasn't an awful lot, and but it worked out okay. I guess we're still here and still able to breathe. I guess that's an important part.
Yeah, so I have to ask. You're from Manitoba, so no big surprise how you got into hockey. Um, but at the time you did, what motivated you to be a goalie?
I couldn't skate. Um, that was I think the way they did that all around is the kid that couldn't skate played goal. My dad was the coach. He was a good player, a good athlete. I think I just had turned 9 in the summertime, so he just put the team together at a little community club and 9 kids, and off we went. And I was the worst skater, so you go play goal.
Now, at that time, and I don't mean this in a joking manner, but were goalies wearing masks at that time at the youth level? What was the protection there?
Well, taking a look at my face, you'd probably guess no. So there, but self-deprecation is a lot of fun. Anyhow, no, that we were not wearing masks. In fact, I don't think we got into masks until I was around 12, and then it was just a baseball mask. We did hockey was outside. There were no indoor arenas to play in other than the 2 big arenas in town, and kids didn't play there. The older big kids and the juniors and pros, whatever. But little kids, we just played outside. So you had your toque on or your hat, and you put this baseball mask on, and off you went.
And at the time, most players were still using straight blades because Sam Mikita hadn't introduced the curve yet. So it's not like kids were lifting the puck, but it still happened. And we all know it probably didn't feel good. That's for sure. Especially outside. The colder the puck, the more it hurts.
Well, yeah, and it's pretty cold up here. So it does hurt, and it did hurt. Don't know why we'd stay in the position after the pain, but I guess you get used to that, and you're so frozen that you don't feel the pain until later. But yeah, the straight blade and the lack of raising the puck, and the kids didn't shoot the puck the same way they do today. I mean, it's just absolutely not. So we got away with not very great equipment. It was the community club's equipment. It wasn't my own. We didn't have money for it. In fact, I didn't wear goal skates until I was 15. So that's a long way into one's career if you're planning on a career to not be fully equipped properly. And we didn't have good. We just didn't have good equipment. But you just did what you did, and you enjoyed it. It was fun.
Now, I remember when I was in high school, I had one of my teammates ask me, they said, if you were playing back before goalies wore masks, what would you have done? And I looked at him square in the face and said, I would have been a forward. It's
Yeah.
like, come on.
Yeah.
I may be a goalie, but I'm not dumb.
Well, that's always the question, right? How smart is the goalie? But yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, but to your point, straight blade, it was a different game in that it was we think so much of the way goalies are moving laterally and around the crease and everything today, but really, when I watch film from the 70s and even earlier, it was very much a game of moving the puck to try and get the goalie out of position. So I mean, you mentioned, you couldn't skate. That's why you wound up in goal. But by the time you made it to the WHA, you probably had to be one heck of a skater.
Well, yeah, we had to learn to skate. And of course, goalies stood up much more than they do now, all the time. We did go down, of course, and we could butterfly. We could do all those things. But your ready position until you actually saw the puck coming towards you was still standing. Then you fell down to stop a low shot or stayed on your feet to stop a high shot. And yeah, by the time I got about 13, 14, I thought, well, I like this hockey game. I'm going to try really hard. And then by the time I was 15, I was skating every day, whether or not, and of course, and that's 3 months a year. That's not like all summer. You get outdoor ice and you start skating the first day, and you skate every day until the middle of December till the middle of March, and then it's gone again. So you had to learn pretty quickly, and I did, because I wanted to do that. So if you want to do something, I guess you just put your mind to it and off you go.
No, as you point out on your website, you're from the era, and I kind of started at the tail end of it. Goalie coaches weren't a thing. Even the pros didn't even have goalie coaches. So it was really self-taught. And, it's not like kids today that can go watch YouTube videos and throw on Sense Arena and all. They have all these resources. Back then, to learn the game, it was watching Hockey Night in Canada and watching the other goalies at the rink. How did you develop your game with such a lack of resources?
You said exactly what I did, and what every guy did. You watch the older guys who played in front of you. So if I was playing bantam hockey or pee-wee, you just watch the older guys play, and you'd go to the community club on the weekend, and there'd be games all day, Saturday and Sunday, and if there wasn't, you'd be skating. But you'd just go and watch the games, and you'd see what the guy did, and you try and remember. You did watch hockey. We watched Hockey Night in Canada, and you didn't see any replays because there were none until later on. Much later on, there wasn't even, there weren't signs on the boards and there weren't helmets on the heads. So, it was one look, one see, and you had to kind of figure that out and make a decision. And so then you go and try it out in practice, and you go to the club on the weekend and put your stuff on and have a million kids on the ice shooting pucks from every which direction, big kids, little kids. Yeah, it was really different. It was fun. It was easy. And if you wanted to get somewhere in goal, or in a position, you just played. You just went out and did it, and that's what I did. So, and I got lucky.
Yeah, and you mentioned you got lucky in that you did make your way into pro hockey. You played for the Jets back in the WHA days before they were part of the NHL. How did you make it onto the Jets back then?
Well, I'm from Winnipeg, so that was interesting. And the year before the Jets arrived on the scene, I'd had a tryout with the Los Angeles Kings and their farm system down in Ontario. We had some tryouts, and I didn't make the team. Came back to Winnipeg, and at the time in the 60s and 70s and way back, senior hockey was kind of like semi-pro. I would equate it to the East Coast League now or something like that. It was pretty good hockey, and all ex-NHL or AHL or IHL guys, and so I played on that team for a year called the St. Boniface Mohawks, and so we played for a year, did some good things there, and then the Jets popped up out of nowhere, literally, and here we have Bobby Hull signing at our famous intersection Portage and Maine, and we've got a team, and then I get a phone call to come and try out for the team. So there was three of us trying out. They had signed NHL guys, Ernie Wakely and Joe Daly, two star guys. I mean, they were top paid, $25,000 a year was the top paid guys, and they were stars on their teams. They came to Winnipeg to make $50,000 a year. In a fledgling league that they hoped would be around for more than 1 year. But that's how I got my start. I got a tryout. I made the team. So that's sort of the history on it. Hung around for 4 years with the organization, got an AFCO Cup, and here I am today.
Yeah, and, for all intents and purposes, you know, you were on the team. It was very, very much like my college career, where I was on the team, but I was that depth goalie. But it's still a very important part of that team, especially when it comes to practice. You are that guy that's staying out late, taking those shots. You're that guy that's you know, doing a lot more than the average person realizes.
You're absolutely right, and I joked that I was Bobby Hull's personal target, but and Bobby still remembers me today by my first name and second name, and he sees me. He's 84 years old, just had a birthday, and I walk in the room. He says, "Gordie, how you doing?" He knows exactly who I am. It's wonderful, and you know we really got along, he and I. But yeah, you're right. I was the depth guy. Well, there was three of us that were extra players. So we did not sign contracts with the Jets. We signed minor league contracts or personal services contracts. And so we were on the team. The only thing we didn't get was credit for the pension plan. But beyond that, we were on the team. We traveled. We did all the things right. And in the first year, and in every other, subsequently every year, there was always injuries to goalies or sickness. So you get into the lineup here and there, and I was on the bench. I played a couple times in the first season, and you know really enjoyed that. But yeah, you know they had two great goalies here, and then they kept bringing it. If they traded one of them away, well, Ernie got traded, and Joe stuck around for all 7 years. So there wasn't much room for the third guy to even get better because, you know, how do you get better when you're not playing games and you're just practicing, right? So it was a tough time for that part of it, but so enjoyable to be on the team.
Now, you mentioned Bobby Hull, and I was fortunate enough when I was a kid, I got to spend some time by myself with him and Stan Mikita. And I asked Bobby about going to Winnipeg, you know, leaving Chicago. And he said, you know, why did you do it? And he said, you know, I didn't want to. And so I just threw a number out there that I thought no athlete would ever get paid. I said, I'll do it for $1 million. And he goes, and they came back to me and said, okay, we'll give you $1 million. And he said, and I'm a man of my word. I said I would do it. So I went, and he said it didn't hit him until that first game when he was pulling his hockey socks on and he didn't see the red, white, and black. Said that's when it hit him that he was no longer a Blackhawk. But he said, you know, it was a great time. He had fun. But yeah, it was he was pretty honest about it.
Oh, he was absolutely honest. Exactly the story. He said, I'll take $1 million. And he walked out of the room. You know, a month later, they had $1 million and handed it to him. So there you go. And, the guy from Winnipeg, Benny Hatskin, who was a shucker and a jiver and a bit of a guy who arranged all of this. He went back to the league and got everybody in the league to pony up $100,000 each, or a bunch of them did, and because he knew that would be the selling point. To double the salary, and the selling point was going to make the deal, right? And of course, as he says, as we all know, that everybody in hockey, that immediately the NHL teams started to double the salaries, triple the salaries of their stars. So they wouldn't take. So here they are; those guys were, hoarding all that money. Yeah. Not giving it to the players, but Bobby moving, and then subsequently Cheevers and Perrant and Joe Daly and Ernie and these kind of guys all moving. All of a sudden, wow, here we go. So it changed. It changed hockey as to what we have today.
And Bobby Hull's shot, it's legendary. It would probably be still one of the hardest shots today if you were still playing. And I often wonder, what would his shot clock in at with a modern stick? When he was just using a wood stick, a straight blade up until, a certain point. How fun was that, facing that every day in practice, going, oh, geez. Because I remember there were guys I practiced with when they were coming down, I'm like, it's only practice. I'm getting out of the way of this one. I don't need another bruise.
Well, yeah. Now, first of all, he was very kind to the goalies on his own team. I can assure you, he took a lot of the speed off. In fact, he would have more fun. He'd throw dippers and divers and risers, but not a million miles an hour. They clocked his shot at 110 in with a wood stick, playing in the WHA with the hook on it. I'm going to guess it would have been much faster with all of the the wow in the sticks today. So he was playing with a piece of tree versus what they use today. So the modern technology, but he was very kind to us. He never shot the puck as hard as he could. And he never really hit us. He was a really good shooter. He didn't hit the goalies. You had to save it if you wanted to just sort of move on it. He didn't put it at you very much.
And I remember him telling me in a game he tried putting that first shot right by the goalie's ear, just so that he would think about it. Next time he wound up, the goalie would think about it, and he goes, and then the next one would be down on the ice because they're thinking it's coming at their head again.
Yep. Oh yeah, that is exactly what his game was, and everybody, the goalies all knew it, and he knew it, and it still worked.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. When you're good, you're good.
And Cheevers would battle him like a crazy guy, and Bernie Perrant. I mean, these guys went out there; they knew who he was and what he could do. And man, it was a treat to be that close. I spent a lot of time actually on the bench, part of the bench, and I wasn't just a bench guy, but I was on the bench watching. I was close up, and I got to see this stuff going on. And while the challenge between the goalie and cat and mouse and whatever else you want to call it, it was a treat to watch that and see how these real pro guys went at each other and did their thing, and the goalies were probably more successful than he was, although he scored a lot of goals. He had a lot of shots.
Mm-hmm. Well, and shooters versus goalies in those days, I liken it very much to a pitcher and a batter in baseball, and that there were a lot of the mind games of what are you going to put at me next? In baseball,
Yep.
Is it going to be a fast ball down the middle? Is it going to be a curveball, or what's it could be? But in those days, it really was like you said, a cat and mouse game where you're expecting that high shot because that's what they do. Well, I'm going to change it up and go low this time, or it was a different game in that it was a little more strategic with the shooting.
You're absolutely right. Well, and those guys played against each other for so many years, but they knew each other. They tweaked this way, tweaked that way, and so it was. But it was a strategy, as you say. At the moment, it was a strategy, changing all the time, trying to figure out what was going to happen, what was going on, and again, it was a treat to watch and be a part of.
Now, you mentioned, when you were with the Jets, you guys won the Avco Cup, which was, for the young listeners, the Stanley Cup of the WHA, and winning it in Winnipeg. What did that mean for the city, and how fun was that?
Well, first of all, Winnipeg was shunned by the NHL as well as Quebec and Edmonton and everybody else that had a smaller population. And so, winning something for a prairie city that gets, we have the same reputation as Buffalo has, I guess, in the States. Not a great one for whatever reason, flat, boring. That's what we were and whatnot. So, we took it on the chin, but we're tough prairie guys. And so we handled it. But so for us to be the best at anything as a city and as a province up here was amazing. And, the league had been around for 4 years then. So it was established. We were beating New York. We were beating, Boston. We were beating, or Hartford. We were beating all the Canadian cities. We were beating LA. So, by the time the fourth year came along, the league had been established, and we had some pretty great hockey players, Anders and Ulf, Lars-Erik Schuberg, and many others. And so it was a full house all the time, and people were proud of our championship caliber hockey team that we had here. Now,
as we all know, the WHA folds, teams come into the NHL. That's around the time when your pro career ended, and then you become a coach. I know why a lot of goalies become coaches. It's because we still love the game and we want to stick around, but, goalie coaching was still kind of a new thing at that time. How and why did you want to go that route?
Well, there was nobody else. you grow up and you look around and you say, well, there's nobody else. And I was still very connected to because I grew up in Winnipeg and I was still living here and playing here. I'm part of the fabric, right? I'm part of the city. I'm part of the fabric from day one. I'm still going to my old community club. And so it was kind of just a natural transition. You get married, you go have kids, and you quit playing hockey for whatever reasons. And then you say, well, gee whiz, I've got a skill that kids, and I love playing hockey. I love coaching, and I love kids. My dad was a big kid himself. He coached forever as an adult. He was a bigger kid than anybody, but at the end of the day, so it was in my blood to do that. I had almost no choice, just as a person. It's the way it was. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching, and I got pretty good at it, I guess, because people would ask me to come out and do some more. So it was almost hard to say no sometimes. That was probably the biggest part of the deal, was saying no to some people just because there wasn't enough time anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, I still play in the beer leagues, and it's funny how many times I have to say no for guys just looking for a goalie.
Yep.
And even I stopped coaching when my daughter was born, because I was coaching high school 6 nights a week here in Minnesota. And I was like, well, with the baby at home, I can't get away with that one. But I still, she's 15 and I still get people calling me going, can you come out and work with our goalies? And it's like,
good.
I could, but I'm busy with my kids right now,
Yep.
No, I totally get that. So I want to make sure we get through these questions, because I ask every guest I've had, over 100 of them now, the same 10 questions. I used to call them rapid fire questions, but I learned real quickly that they take up more time because they elicit more stories. So I've asked everybody the same ones. When we talk of Manitoba goalies, Eddie Balfour is one of them that I ask these questions to. So the first one is, what's the craziest coaching moment from your playing days?
Guy's going to take a penalty shot, and my coach pulls me out of the net and puts me on the bench, and doesn't replace me. He was angry at the referee. He didn't think the referee was doing a very good job for the whole game. It was in the third period. He was PO'd with the ref. So the guy gives somebody a penalty shot against us. Coach calls me over, puts me on the bench, and says, "Okay, run the penalty shot." Empty net. Wow. What's this about? Does this go against my record? No, it didn't. It didn't matter, but
it's funny as goalies, because those are the things we wonder about is, how does this impact, me?
Yeah.
So the next question is, what's your favorite all-time goalie mask?
Oh my gosh. Well, my Jets one, of course. It's not really the mask so much as where it got made and how it got made. It's sort of the Bernie Perrant style, the holes and the pointed chin and whatnot. Back in 72, we were in Ottawa, played a game in Ottawa, and against the Nationals. And after the game, Ernie had arranged for the guy to come up and do both of us. He didn't tell me, and so it's midnight, and the guy shows up at our room, knocks on the door, and Ernie's expecting him, and there we are, and he lay you down on the bed and he plaster of Paris on your face, and you're breathing through a straw at 2 a.m, and you're hoping the guy doesn't leave you there for the rest, because you're stuck in this mask. You're not going. Yeah. Then he pulls it off, and a month later you get a mask. So there you go. But that was I love the mask. It was the style, but it was the how it got made was the fun part.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would be able to handle that with claustrophobia.
Well, there was two of us in the room, so we were okay.
Yeah. So when you think of the masks the guys are wearing today, and how far they've come, what are your thoughts about modern day masks?
Well, they're heavy. I mean, I thought the masks we wore, sort of in the early stage mask, I had one that I thought was really heavy. Man, it's not even close The masks now are, you got to have a strong neck and shoulders to wear that sucker. But it offers tremendous. I mean, obviously, it offers a lot of extra protection. And kids still get concussions, but shooters now. I mean, if a goalie doesn't get hit half a dozen times in the head during practice, it's like the shooters are unhappy with themselves. And it's kind of it's a negative as far as I'm concerned. We ask them not to shoot high, but they don't care. It's top cheddar, crossbar down, blah blah blah. Well, okay, fine, do that when there's no goalie.
Right.
But they don't. They're well. I call them morons, but that's just my own particular. I call them other things too, but morons is the nice one.
Yeah.
But yeah. The masks are great, and they have to be because. I love the neck guards, the floppy things. The goalies don't like them, so they get the pointed thing on the bottom. But I really like the floppy chin thing. So I wish they'd all wear them because I just fear the puck hitting them in the throat and whatnot. So it scares me.
Yeah, there's a fellow in my area that still wears a Mike Louis fiberglass mask. In fact, I played him last night, and it's always funny when you step on the ice and guys don't know about him, and he comes out there and he's got that old fiberglass mask on, and he still wears it.
There you go. Good for him. Hope he doesn't get hit.
I've talked to him. He goes, yeah, I get hit every once in a while. He goes, but it doesn't hurt any more than if I were wearing a modern mask. So
okay,
it fits his personality.
There you go.
So the next question is, what's your favorite rink that you've played at?
Wow. My favorite rink that I've played at. I would guess Boston Gardens would have been. I played in Madison Square Garden. I mean, the big old rinks would be the ones that that I would have enjoyed. The ones I watched on TV forever. So Boston Gardens, Madison Square Gardens. Because they were what they were. Boston was really different because you had to go downstairs and it was kind of an old grungy place that, what are these guys playing in the NHL doing here? What is this? We got a better rink in Winnipeg. And it wasn't anything pretty, but at the end of the day, the Boston Garden was kind of a special place. And so I enjoyed playing in there.
Yeah, as a kid, I grew up in Chicago and went to the old Chicago Stadium, and it's in a terrible neighborhood. You're walking through the concourse and your feet are sticking to the ground from the spilled beer and everything else. But God, that was such a beautiful old barn and such a fun place to go to, Yeah. They
not good for spectators.
Yeah. It's a build, one of those buildings. The modern buildings just don't have that character.
No, they can't. No.
So what was your favorite stick that you used as a goalie?
We had a CCM. I had a CCM stick. It was a pattern made pro stick from CCM, and back then sticks weren't as. I mean, they were. Hull used a Northland. I think Joe. used a Northland. Ernie used a Sherwood. I used Sherwoods and CCMs. So, but CCM was a light stick that I really liked to handle nicely, chip rebound in the corner nicely. So I was happy with that.
No, did your stick have a curve on it, or was it a straight blade?
It was a tiny curve, if anything, and maybe just towards the end. But basically, it was a straight stick. I wasn't a great shooter of the puck. I was okay, certainly not like today or even the good shooters way back. But to be able to move the puck on my back, I was okay on my backhand. I was probably better on my backhand than I was on my forehand. So, a straight stick was probably better for me.
Yeah, my first stick was a straight blade, and I asked my dad, I was like, why are we getting a straight blade? He goes, well, first of all, you don't know if you're going to be a right-handed or left-handed goalie. You're in your first year. You might want to try it up. And he goes, just try it out, see how you like it. And I didn't hate it, but you can't find them anymore. So it is what it is.
No. There you go.
Now, you played in an era when guys would they could be mean. So this next question could be interesting. What's the best chirp you heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, not directed at you?
Wow, boy, that's an interesting question. Well, it was probably at a referee, and it was had to go into the had to go in there. Where do you keep your dog? Your to the head referee because you're the blind guy with a dog. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not very polite. But that was a chirp at the referee, and I thought, oh my God, it was funny. I guess we weren't as attuned to those kinds of rude things, but yeah, that was probably the best chirp that I'd ever heard. Where do you keep your dog?
Well, and that was in an era too when the referees were not liked. I mean, we think of how refs are treated today at the youth levels and everything else. Doesn't carry a candle to the way they were treated back then.
Oh no, but too back then, of course, when you're playing pro, all those guys know each other.
Yeah.
So if you're a rookie, you weren't saying that. So it was only the veteran guys saying that to the veteran referees, and that's just bugging each other, really. I mean, it's rude. It wouldn't be tolerated today. But at the time, yeah, it was just an understood statement of fun, or you're trying to get the guy's ire up a little bit. Why would you do that? Why would you get him mad at you? Because now he's going to call more penalties. So
Right.
we weren't the smartest group of human beings at the time either. So there you go.
There is that. So what's the worst post-game beer you've had?
You know what? I didn't drink beer.
Okay.
I was a non-beer drinking dude. I did slip into the hard stuff a little bit, but never really got into beer. So I probably had a sip here and a beer there. I mean, but then so I would say Molson's Canadian or Labatt's Blue because those would make sense for me to say that because again they didn't have all those specialty things way back then. So probably one of those two would have been the favorite. We were sponsored by Molson, so I probably should have said Molson at the start.
That works. I like it. So when you taped your stick, did you go to heel to toe or toe to heel?
About 4 inches above the heel, right down to the toe.
Okay, so yeah, you went heel to toe, and
Up.
yeah, I've tried talking to younger kids who've only played with these composite sticks, and they look at me and they go, "Why do you tape it up along the heel?" And I try to explain to them. Back in the day of the wooden goalie sticks, you had to as a way to try and get a little more life out of that stick. And they're just like, well, they're trying to get them to comprehend it. They just can't.
Yeah, they don't comprehend glue.
No.
and little tack nails.
Yeah, I always say I used Christian goalie sticks when I was younger, and
Sure.
you could always commiserate with other Christian goalie stick users by talking about putting the wood glue in that heel, putting it in the vase and the vise overnight, and putting it back together.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, what was your favorite number to wear and why?
Well, I wore 28, so that would be my favorite number, and still my favorite number. When I played junior hockey, I wore number 1. That was the one given to me. That was the standard, I think, 1 and 30 at the time. Again, way back in those days, you didn't have many choices. I guess Dave Dryden wore 28, Ken wore 29. A few other guys, I think Bob Sauvé wore 28. Not many guys wore 28. More guys wore 29. Fleury wears 29. You can go around and around on this, but 28 was the number given to me. They just handed it to me, say, there's your number. Bingo.
Yeah.
So there you go.
It works for me.
I'm on the team. Thank you.
I'm going to save this last question for a little bit later because it's going to go nicely. But, you get into coaching and the game has changed an awful lot since you started coaching to where it is today. How have you been able to evolve with this ever-changing game and stay on top of all of these new techniques that we never thought of, 20, 30, 40 plus years ago?
Yeah, you're right. It's been a huge change. And, I guess there's two parts to why I look at goaltending today. There's a lot of technique, and there's all the young kid goalies are all learning from the older kid goalies and the guys that have graduated junior and whatnot. So the guys I coached way back 20 years ago started to do all this fancy stuff, and and they're now coaching the little kids and whatnot. I'm not really required to actually teach, pushing, and I can't. They'd have to get a Litz crane to pick me up off the ice. I can't get up and down anymore. But at the end of the day, I never had to really learn that. I understand it. I understand the dynamics of it and the technique on it, but I've never had to actually do it. So that's okay. But I certainly always invite a specialist goalkeeper in to work with goalies that I coach, so that I'm sure that they're getting the proper technique and all that stuff. My game is more the strategy, the mental part, the psychological part. They call me Dr. Phil in Pilot Mound, where I coach for the last 5 years. It's more the strategy, you had a bad game. How do you handle that stuff? I really work on that stuff. And there's so much of that, and that isn't being taught. That's kind of hit and miss with most hockey academies and AAA teams and whatnot. Some of the goalie coaches deal with some of it. You deal with it because you have to, but I make a point of that being what I teach. A lot of video stuff. So there's a whole chunk of the game that isn't really looked at, and I go to practices now. I've always gone to team practices rather than to the small goalie centers where they can teach small area stuff and goalpost stuff and all that good thing. Just because what happens in a game, gotta take it to practice and figure that out in the practice during and remind the kids. So I've really sort of got, like, maybe it's three parts. It's going to practice, it's doing the head stuff, the emotional stuff, and then there's the technique stuff, which I allow someone else to do.
Well, and I've talked with several, I'll call us older goalies. For as much as the game has changed, the fundamentals haven't. A good basic stance, positioning, reading a play, basic movement from the shuffle to the T-push, coming back and making that angle to the post. For as much as it's changed, the fundamentals haven't. And that probably won't for another 100 plus years. Who knows if they ever do. And so that's the other easy thing. So when I started working with really, the little goalies, it was easy for me because these are the basics. I don't care what new equipment you've got, what new, technique it is, whether it's the Panda, the RVH, all this other stuff going on. We don't need to learn that because we need to learn how to stand first.
Well, you're right. I mean, you go to kindergarten before you go to grade 12. Simple as that. So, you got to have all that basic stuff, the fundamental stuff, the balance, the skating. It's the same skating. It's different skating. The kids can't do crossovers, and because the pads aren't round, they're all square and they're too high and all that stuff. So, but the other guys you've talked to, and I concur completely. Much of the game is the same. You got to be able to do certain things to start with. Then you transform yourself into this other thing. Stacking the pads is coming back on occasion. Yeah. The shooters have learned to shoot over, to put it 13 inches high now. So under your glove and over your pad instead of off the crossbar. So they figured out that's a good spot. So now stacking your pads, you see that occasionally. And so, there's using the stick more. I wish the coaches would teach that more. Yeah, kids don't make stick saves. They don't make on the blocker side in particular. It's a flat save where the rebound just slides on the ice. Why, my God, there's a rebound that's just wanting to go in the net. And so they don't do that. They don't poke check very much anymore. So the forward is just able to go right into the crease with the puck, and no one ever touches them or knocks the puck off a stick. Those kinds of things are still left for someone like me, an old guy who says, hey, you know what? Why don't you try this? We get them to try it, and then it works. And boy, here's a newfound skill, a newfound tool in the toolbox that they didn't have before. So, way to go, Gordie. Thank you. And so that's that. Yeah. So the old stuff's coming back, or should come back in some way.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're starting to see more poke checks. filter back into the game, which is great because it has been underutilized. And, you know, you mentioned the toolbox. You know, my toolbox has the 2-pad stack, and I use it quite a bit to the point where it doesn't even phase my teammates anymore. They're like, oh, there it is again. You know, the first few times they thought it was great. Now they half expect it. It's like, oh, Lord. You know, so when I go back to those 10 questions I ask everybody, the last one is, what advice do you have for young goalies?
Wow, what advice? Well, my gosh, have the fun part's got. I have a moniker or whatever. It's STPHF. Stop the puck, have fun. And I've used that for 20, 25 years now. And basically, we learn how to stop the puck, and that's going to be your fun time because you're going to dislike this game when you're not stopping it. So that's part one, I guess. But you know, yeah, what would be my advice? Yeah, don't get caught up in it to the pressure destroys your head and your heart and your mind in the game because it's not that important. It's just a game. We want to win. We want to do good, but it's okay when we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I've said it for years in the beer leagues, and I think it's true at the younger age. At the beer leagues, we say as long as there's if nobody gets hurt and there's beer in the locker room after the game, it's a win. But at the younger ages, I think it's just as long as nobody gets hurt, it's a win.
Sure
we went out, we had fun, you know, we got to play a game. And then when you get to the beer leagues, there's added bonuses, but that's for them to learn later on in life.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, Gordie, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. We were able to sandwich us in between commitments on your part. So I thank you for being flexible.
Well, this has been super. I've listened to your show in the past. I do another podcast up here in Canada. It's attached to my website. There's some goalie instruction in there. There's also some fun stuff too. So for anybody that's looking for my website, GordieTumilsonGoalies.ca. But at the end of the day, I'm at Pilot Mound Hockey Academy. If anybody's looking to come as a goalie or as an out player, we've got a great program there. If you're interested, you can connect with us on our website there, PilotMoundHockeyAcademy.com. That's my plug for those two things. And again, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, and I'll get to the website on the show notes. And hey, if the travels ever bring you down to the Twin Cities, let me know, and we'll get together.
That'd be great. I'd appreciate that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to traveling again. I haven't traveled for 3 years, so getting out of the city and out of the province, it would be a nice thing for a change.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know you got more going on tonight. So again, thank you, and we'll keep in touch.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
All right. Bye now.
Bye now.